Alright, welcome back. So this is the unplanned fourth segment of our soft plastic swim bait rigging tutorials. I was editing the video and picking things up, and I realized that I had three other types of rigging methods that I didn't cover in the previous videos. So we're going to take a shot right now and kind of look at those. So those are a fixed football head jig. And these are all weedless presentations. So it's a football jig head on an extra wide gap hook, kind of a darter head on an EWG hook, and then we looked at this, so a screw lock swim bait hook, but we talked about needing to add some kind of weight to that, and I mentioned either running on a Carolina rig or pegging a bullet sinker in front of this. Well, the other option is to actually use a twist-on jig head, and this is a Freedom Tackle stealth jig head. So let's cover these three different ways. Alright, so first up we've got our football jig head here with a fixed extra wide gap hook. So they make this as a pivot head jig, but this is the fixed head version. So what we'll notice here is the shank before we get into the Z-bend is fairly long. So what that allows us to do is get a decent amount of plastic on the hook before the plastic hits the head of the jig, so we don't have to worry about the front part here tearing loose. So let's look at how we'll rig this and what we would marry this up to, and why we would fish this. So I'm going to go ahead and use this caffeine shad here. We look at it, and it's a fairly good match. It'll mate up right in the middle of the thing. We got plenty of belly here. Alright, so the way we're going to rig this is we'll rig it exactly the way we would rig a plastic worm. So I'll come in through the nose and out the belly of the bait, making sure we get it centered. Slide this up and over the Z-bend, turn it 180 degrees, and notice that this bait tucks right into the back of the jig head. Figure out where it needs to come through. Come straight through the bait, keeping it as straight as possible, and out the hook slit in the top. And what we end up with is a nice straight rigged bait, and the hook is buried in that slit in the top. So where we'd use this is great during the bass spawn. So run a swim bait, not like this one, this is more of a shad color, but running like a Houdini or a bluegill colored bait, swim bait, and we can use this now to kind of drag it through the bass beds. It'll sit on the bottom, then as we run it through the, as it bounces off cover and rocks, this will look like something kind of banging, like a bait fish feeding on the bottom, or like a nest raider in the case of using a bluegill style bait. We still get plenty of hook to come through when we set the hook, and if we want to clean this up even more, on this particular bait, we can take a knife through the bottom and put a little bit of a belly slit in here to help with our hookups. So that's running a fixed football head jig. Alright, our next bait is more of a darter head. So I'm going to use this on the, like our Reaction Innovations dipper style bait. So what we notice here is this is a real small back on this jig head. Got a nice tapered front on this bait. We got a good belly slit in here. So it lets me get away with a fairly small hook. So once again, we're going to rig this almost just like the that football head, just like Texas rigging any soft plastic bait on an EWG hook. So run that up in there again over the bend, and once again got kind of a long shank in here, a little bit too much bait in there. The longer the section in here, the easier these are to rig. So run that up and over, make sure the bend has come through, figure out where we need to rig this thing, and then I've got the belly slit here to really help me rig this. Again, out the top, text posed, pinch it up a little bit, kind of put the point back in there so it doesn't pop loose. So I'm completely weedless. And then compared to the football head, so the football head I would use when banging the bottom on fairly open water. This one, on the other hand, I would use running through cover like tules, weeds, that kind of stuff, because this bullet head and this vertical line tie is going to keep this incredibly weedless as I bring it through cover, and then when I go to set the hook, fish hits it. I've got plenty of hook to come out here. Thing to keep in mind with these these jig heads in particular, I don't remember who makes them. They're sold at Bass Pro. I always get them at Bass Pro. They come in a bunch of different sizes, and they use a Gamakatsu hook, so it's a really fantastic hook on these things. But thing to keep in mind is this is a light wire hook, so I don't want to be running this with 40 pounds straight braid, because as soon as I go to set the hook, I'm going to straighten this hook out. So make sure my line and my rod match the hook that I'm using. So with this light wire, I'm looking at maybe 12 pound or lighter fluorocarbon or light braid and a lighter action rod. So that is the bullet style darter head on an EWG. Alright, then last up we've got our unweighted screw lock style hook. This can also be done with an EWG hook, but this is the hook that came with the Freedom Tackle swinging jig head or stealth jig head. The problem here is there's not a whole lot of shank on this hook right here, and as a result, that means I can't get a whole lot of plastic in here without it interfering with the jig head. So this has become incredibly difficult to rig without actually while still getting the full action on the bait. So I don't like this style. I prefer going with a screw lock. So, just like all the other screw lock baits or screw lock setups, go ahead and screw this into the nose. This particular hook is an owner, just a regular owner swimbait hook. It's not one of the beast, real deep bellied hooks, but this is a thinner bait, so I can get away with it. So everything lined up here. Figure out where this is going to come through. Actually, this is a trocar hook, not an owner. And it's not, but like I said, it's just one of their regular, not one of their mag swimbait hooks. All right, so we got that in there. The point's nice and hidden. I've still got plenty of hook to come through on the hook set. All right, and now we'll look at what this Freedom Tackle jig head brings. So if you look at this, there is a kind of a screw lock down in the base of this. So what I'm going to do is I want this thing to rig up this way, and unfortunately this is a horizontal line tie, and there's where we're going to run into a problem with this particular jig head. There's a way around this. What I ideally want is a horizontal one here, or something that doesn't need eyes here. But the way these work is then we'll screw this in here. Screw this all the way in, up onto the jig head. And we end up with our swinging weight on the front and our swim bait out back. There is somebody that makes a jig head with a horizontal tie here, and I believe Freedom Tackle actually makes one of these where this is rotated 90 degrees. And then the hook that the Freedom Tackles actually come with, they come with a skirted version. It's this hook with a screw lock trailer keeper right here, and then a rubber band right there to keep it from sliding down. But again, not my favorite setup, because now that bridges part of the gap of your hook here, and it doesn't leave you a whole lot of gap for a hook set. So, but there's a free swinging weighted trailer on a lightweight jig head. Alright, so hopefully that completes all of our possible rigging options. We kind of talked about some of the different reasons we'd use them, and the benefits and the drawbacks of the various rigging options. If you like the video, give me a thumbs up. Check out the rest of the series. I'll have them linked in the description below. And until next time, cheers and tight lines.